Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
Not even the Giants could screw up this head coaching search. Where will John Harbaugh wind up? The wildest NFL conspiracy theory you've probably heard. And we're joined by our buddy David Shepard to talk NBA and NFL. It's all in this edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, welcome in, off and running, a fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. Lots to get into on this episode for sure, but first off, thank you for hitting play and making the podcast as part of your day as we get ready for one of the big weekends of NFL football. We only have 4 more weekends of NFL football left in this season, and you could make the argument that this might be the best of the weekends, the most amount of games, games on Saturday, games on Sunday. We got a game on Monday. 4 more weekends. The NFL season absolutely flies by. And even though the playoffs are just beginning, it's only going to be a month here before the season is done once again. Now, before we get too deep into things, got to remind you, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you are taking the podcast in on. It certainly does help us out. Like the episode, rate the episode, leave a review if you can, but certainly subscribe on whatever platform you are taking in the podcast on. It really does help us out, and it doesn't cost you anything. It only takes a second or two, but it really does help the podcast grow. So let's get into it right now, and let's start off with the NFL coaching carousel, because it was already spinning after Black Monday, but now we get into even past that, and the news this week of John Harbaugh out in Baltimore, the news on Thursday about Mike McDaniel. He's out in Miami. So now you have 2 new openings, and I think you can make the argument Baltimore, best opening of the bunch, right? You walk in, you got Lamar Jackson right away. So you got a quarterback who's a 2-time MVP and a stable organization, a winning organization. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the Dolphins, which I think you could make the argument they are the worst of all the situations. No quarterback there. The salary cap situation is terrible in Miami. So we'll get into that a little bit. But I want to do is I want to connect this with the New York Giants. And what this coaching field tells you is a big lesson for the New York Giants. And the lesson that the Giants, and for Giant fans this year, is very simple. And it is this: the New York Giants cannot screw this up. This coaching field is so good, not even the Giants can mess this up. And think about what that's really saying as I hit the microphone again. The Giants organization has been as bad a team, as bad as a franchise as we have had in the NFL for a decade. One bad decision after another bad decision. They have figured ways to screw things up you didn't even think were possible to screw up. But this year, they've got the dream scenario. They have 3 guys, 3 legitimate candidates that they could hire tomorrow to be the head coach. And if they got any of the 3, they are not only out of the basement, they are back on the road to respectability. And we knew that when we went into this offseason, the Giants had to find a coach who had a track record of success and has been a head coach. No more projections, no more coordinators, no more thinking in a few years this guy could be good. No, it's got to be about wins right now. And the 3 guys are clearly Kevin Stefanski, Mike McCarthy, and John Harbaugh. Any of those guys are light years better than anything the Giants have had since Tom Coughlin walked away from the New York Giants, or the Giants got rid of Tom Coughlin. And you had to go out this offseason, and it was not a guarantee that you would be able to find a candidate. Like last year, you had Mike Vrabel. That would have been a perfect candidate. He's not available this year. So it was a worry and troublesome to think who's going to be available. Mike McCarthy's been out there, and we thought that Stefanski could be, but then the news about Harbaugh, that makes it even better. And any of these guys, you can rank them however you want. You can look at them however you want. They are on a separate tier of any coaches who might be available this year. You know, sometimes guys who have been coaches before, you're looked at as retreads. None of these guys are retreads. They are now at the point for the Giants where they can get one of these three guys. He walks in tomorrow, and all of a sudden, they bring a level of stability that the Giants have not had in a very long time. So if I were to rank them, number 3 on my list would be Kevin Stefanski. He was the coach of the Cleveland Browns, won the Coach of the Year twice in Cleveland, took Cleveland to the playoffs a couple of times, won a playoff game in Cleveland 1 year, made the postseason with 5 different quarterbacks over the course of the season, including Joe Flacco. And what that tells you is he did an amazing job of what coaching is supposed to be. He looked around at what the talent was that he had on the roster, and he figured out a way to get the most out of that talent. That's what coaching is supposed to be. You know, sometimes these guys, they have a system and it has to work with their system and it doesn't. No, that's not what he did. He was able to get the best out of the talent that he had at his disposal, and that's saying something. And he was not married to whatever system or concepts that he thought about at the beginning of the year. Now, did he do everything right in Cleveland? Cleveland is a hopeless situation. The fact that you have any success there, it's like it's multiplied by 5. Nobody has success in Cleveland. And if it were just one fluky year, you would say, okay, fine. He had it twice, 2 Coach of the Year awards. So did he do everything perfectly? No. But I think you have to take a look and put it in context of what the situation was. And I think a lot of the blame there goes to the owner because they've not had any success outside of Kevin Stefanski. So that tells you something. Now, do I think that he was responsible for getting rid of Baker Mayfield? No, I don't. I think that was more the owner. I think the trade for Deshaun Watson, which ruined the organization, I blame that more on the owner. Kevin Stefanski would not be my first choice, but he is a good coach and would walk in right away, especially with that experience. Going to the Giants, it's such a more stable organization that he would know some of the roadblocks that come with a bad organization and be able to avoid them. And he would absolutely get the Giants back on the road to respectability right away. So he would be number 3. Doesn't have the track record of the other 2. Number 2 on my list would be Mike McCarthy. And Mike McCarthy has to be the most underrated coach maybe in NFL history. This dude needs a hype man. He needs a PR team. He needs somebody to kind of remind people of who Mike McCarthy is, because this guy basically has the same resume as John Harbaugh. And yet people, Giant fans, you mentioned John Harbaugh. We got to get John Harbaugh. We got to get John Harbaugh. And he's a great head coach. He's a Hall of Fame head coach. But so is Mike McCarthy. They basically have the same record. They basically have the same amount of division titles. They're basically the same guy. And the reaction to Harbaugh is cut the check, make it a blank check. And the reaction to McCarthy is like what you scrape off your shoe after you go to the dog park. And McCarthy, the criticisms are, well, he only won one Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. Well, I would just point out, did Aaron Rodgers win any Super Bowls without Mike McCarthy? Like, when did the great winning come after Mike McCarthy left town? Did it all of a sudden elevate Aaron Rodgers to something? Well, he only won because he had elite talent. What coach doesn't win with elite talent consistently? Like, Mike McCarthy has a track record of success. John Harbaugh, he had a 2-time MVP and did not win a Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers was a 2-time MVP with Mike McCarthy and did win a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson didn't even get to a Super Bowl with John Harbaugh. So that says something. Maybe it says something about Lamar Jackson too, but it seems like that's a hit on Mike McCarthy where it's not a hit on John Harbaugh. McCarthy brings 2 things to the table, I think, to me, that Harbaugh does not. One, he has an actual area of expertise. He is an offensive coach. John Harbaugh, who was a special teams coach, he's more of a CEO. McCarthy, he has worked with quarterbacks. He has developed quarterbacks. He has an area of expertise. You don't have to worry about the offensive coordinator leaving in a year for a head coaching job because he's the offensive coordinator. Even if he's not the play caller, it's his offensive system that you're going to be running. So it's not as dependent on finding the hot new offensive coordinator. Number 2, Mike McCarthy had success in 2 separate stops. He's had 2 separate stops in his career. He's had success in both of them. He won in Green Bay, a very stable situation, and he won in Dallas. Now, he did not win in Dallas as greatly as he did in Green Bay, but the fact that he had any success in Dallas at all, consistently, 3 years in a row, won 12 games in a row for the Cowboys. The Cowboys don't do that. Since their last Super Bowl title with Barry Switzer, they've had 5 seasons where a coach has won 12 or more games. Mike McCarthy's got 3 of them. And the owner there is a problem. There's constant attention. There's constant chaos with everything surrounding the Cowboys, all the attention that they get. And he won there, and he won games there consistently. Now, did it go perfectly? No. Who else has won there? When they got rid of Mike McCarthy, did it get better or did it get worse? And in Dallas, there's so much attention. There's more attention in Dallas than there is in New York. So I think that's something that people overlook too often. And then, of course, there's John Harbaugh. And Harbaugh is number one for a couple of reasons. The fans certainly have tabbed him as the guy they have to get. But he's the guy that they have been looking for. They want their kind of guy, not just for the resume, but because he's a stable guy. The fact that he has been in one place for 18 seasons, that appeals to the New York Giants. That's something that they're a very conservative organization, and they want somebody. They've not wanted to fire the guys that they've had to fire. So you take a look at who they've had here and who John Harbaugh would be replacing, from Brian Daboll to Joe Judge to Pat Shurmur to Ben McAdoo. None of those guys, maybe at some point, Brian Daboll will get another chance to be a head coach, but John Harbaugh comes in right away and is already a head coach and has had success multiple times, multiple years, multiple playoff runs, multiple division titles. He's a guy with an actual resume of success. You don't have to project it. You don't have to trust it. You don't have to worry about it developing over time. He's a long-time head coach. He's got experience. He's got success. Check that box. Check this box. So cut the check, get the deal done. Now, the fact that he is going to wait until after the weekend to start interviewing, that does have to make you a little bit nervous if you're a Giant fan, because you have to wonder, is that just him catching his breath after being let go of the one head coaching job that he's had? Or is this strategic? Is this the result of, hey, let me see what other jobs might open up? It seems like there's a lot of speculation that one of the coaches that are coaching this weekend, that they might lose their job if they lose. There's been speculation about the Eagles' job. There's been speculation about the Bills' job. Mike Tomlin with the Steelers. That's a possibility if they were to lose. Certainly, they won that game, the final game of the regular season, and it's Harbaugh that's out. It's possible that the Steelers might want to make a change after that as well. There's been talk about Green Bay getting rid of Matt LaFleur. It doesn't seem like that these are possibilities, but if you're John Harbaugh, this is the last coaching job that you are going to have. So you want to know all of your possible details and all your possible options before you start interviewing. And it does seem like the fact that he's not going to interview until next week is a little bit strategic. So that is a major thing. But here's the beauty of it for the Giants. I think that Harbaugh is probably the best of the 3. I would rank him number 1. But if you lose out on him for any reason, the Eagles' job becomes open and he's got a relationship with Philadelphia that goes way back, okay, fine. There are 2 other coaches who are just as credible, who walk in, they know what being a head coach is like, they know the pitfalls, they've had the success, and you turn the organization over to them. This is not a one-and-done type situation. So I would say it is funny to me that people continue to make it out like Harbaugh is by far this separate category. He's had great success. He's, again, basically Mike McCarthy. And the criticism of McCarthy, while he didn't get it, he had a year where he was 15-1 and they didn't win a playoff game. John Harbaugh had a season, 2019? They were 14-2, best team in football, and they lost at home to the Titans. Didn't lose to the Chiefs that year. That was 2023 when they lost to Kansas City. So, and they were the number 1 seed that year as well. So there's been disappointment in Harbaugh's career, but let me be honest with you. John Harbaugh, to me, he is going to be the next head coach of the Giants. I would be very surprised if any of the coaches coaching this week where their jobs would open up, and of the landscape that we're sitting here right now looking at, the Giants' job is the number one job. And if the Giants don't hire him, it won't be because the Giants passed. That much is for sure. It will be because Harbaugh didn't get something that he wanted or looked at the organization, and that would be a real troubling sign that something is amiss within the organization. But the Giants are clearly going to want Harbaugh because he presents stability. And with the Giants, they look at stability almost like a personality trait, not like something you earn based on the success that you have. And he just feels like the Giants, right? He's professional, he's clean, he's buttoned up. There's not going to be any drama with John Harbaugh. There's never any controversies really with John Harbaugh. There's no ego. There's no grandstanding. I know that people have brought up that he might want to have his own GM and Joe Shane stuff, and we'll get into that in a minute. But he's a professional, cleaned up guy that when you look at him, you know what you get. And which is why I don't understand why the media and fans are acting like this is some chaotic coaching search. Again, the Giants, they will have their number one. Like to them, this is not three guys. Now, I think that they would be fine with any of the three, but I don't think that the Giants can screw this up. But to me, they've got a clear number one candidate in their mind, and that would certainly be John Harbaugh. So we'll see what happens when the interviews do start. I look at the landscape of the NFL and the jobs that are open. The Giants check more boxes for John Harbaugh, who, again, this is going to be almost certainly his final head coaching job. He's 63 years old. So he's a guy that's coming off a run of 18 years. I don't know that he's going to get another 18 years, but I think he'd probably want to coach for another more than 5, maybe less than 10, and that would be right up the Giants' alley. Whoever they do hire is going to get way more leeway because he's almost certainly going to have way more success. Like there's been no track record of success here for over a decade. John Harbaugh walks in day one, and the Giants, they've not wanted to fire these guys that they've had to fire, but they've been given no benefit. But there's not going to be a type of situation where John Harbaugh walks in and the Giants are out of it by Halloween, or you're looking at week 5 and Googling NFL mock draft for that year, because he's a legitimate head coach. And you look at the boxes that check, there's no other organization that he can get a job this offseason outside of the ones that might become available after this week of football in the playoffs, but that has a quarterback, that has a semblance of a roster, that has talent on offense and an offensive line that's been rebuilt. He's got a receiver in Malik Neighbors, assuming he comes back healthy. They have a high draft pick again, number 5 in the draft. So the Joe Shane thing to me is not going to be an issue. The only stumbling block I could see, the Giants with those family members in the front office, you can't fire those guys. That might be a little bit of a stumbling block, but again, John Harbaugh, the Giants are going to want him, and I think that at the end of the day, he is going to want them. Now, let's get to the Miami angle of this. John Harbaugh is not going to Miami. I can tell you that, right? We've spoken on this podcast many times about the dysfunction of the Miami Dolphins, and I know about the connection between the Harbaughs and Stephen Ross, the Dolphins owner. He might be a real estate genius, but when it comes to closing deals, this guy could screw up a one-car funeral. People have said, well, Stephen Ross, he's going out this year and he's going big game hunting. You think he's not gone big game hunting before? He has. He tried to land Jim Harbaugh before he took the 49er job, met with him, even while he had a coach. He didn't take the Dolphin job. He's had multiple opportunities to hire Jim Harbaugh, has not been able to hire Jim. He went out and tried to get Sean Payton. Sean Payton never became the Dolphins coach. Went out and tampered with Tom Brady. How'd that work out? Dolphins lost draft picks as a result. So in terms of sealing the deal, maybe in real estate, he's a genius, but in the NFL, he is the worst salesman that you could possibly have. Stephen Ross, he wouldn't know a good head coach if he landed on him. This is the guy who had Dan Campbell and Todd Bowles, and he got rid of them in favor of Joe Philbin and Adam Gase. So that tells you the mindset of the owner. And I know people think, well, the fact they got rid of Mike McDaniel, that's part of a master plan. I can tell you it's not part of a master plan. The Dolphins have no master plans outside of screwing things up more often. Stephen Ross, the motto of the Dolphins is they just don't know what the hell they're doing. That's the explanation. There's no master plan behind the scenes. They just don't know what they're doing. Plus, you'd have to account Miami might very well be the worst job opening this year. As we've mentioned before, they don't have a quarterback. They have Tua on the roster, but they've kind of moved off him and now are stuck with $99 million of dead cap space. They're in salary cap hell, at least for another year, and they have no path to success in 2026. So they are much closer to a complete rebuild than any playoff success. That is not the job that a 63-year-old in John Harbaugh with options, with success, is ever going to take. And people float out about money or there's no state taxes in Florida. That doesn't matter. The money is all going to be roughly the same. John Harbaugh has options. So if I hear one more time about the weather in Miami or the state taxes in Miami, no, but those things, that's not why anybody takes a job. Those things have not changed. I don't know if Florida has ever had state taxes, but they have not had it for a very long time. They haven't landed any great coaches as a result of that. The weather has always been the same. Miami is a dumb organization who will probably always do what dumb organizations do. They hire a first-time head coach, a hot coordinator somewhere, a guy who doesn't really have many other options, probably has never interviewed for a job before, a head coaching job, but he's been raved about in other places, and the Dolphins say, well, hire this guy and we'll see what he does. And the guy will probably not have any success whatsoever. And even if he does have some success, the dysfunction of the Dolphins organization will swallow him up over time. And when they do that this time, maybe it will work out. But of course, that's just like the guy they just fired in Mike McDaniel. And I'm a Mike McDaniel fan, even though the Dolphins are a dysfunctional organization. And he was the best head coach by far of the Stephen Ross tenure. And Dolphin fans celebrating his dismissal, I don't know how long they've been Dolphin fans, because I can tell you right now, it's not about to get better. It's about to get worse. And he's what you would want in a coach. Think about how he got the job. He was a guy who didn't get a whole lot of interviews. I don't think he had any. But he came in and he crafted an offense, and that offense was successful. His job was to come in and develop Tua Tagovailoa after the previous head coach wanted to run him out of the league. And he was able to do it. Now, it was only for a short time, but nobody else was able to do that either. No one else was up to the challenge. And you take a look at the offense that he was able to develop. Other teams he was so innovative and was able to get the best out of the players he had. Most Dolphin coaches, I can tell you, they bring no strategic advantage. So the problem was the way the organization was built. They had a very short window because of the cap space that they had. But as the quarterback regressed and as the roster got worse, the results got worse. So people keep bringing up about Mike McDaniel, that he's not a real head coach. He lost the players. Well, they started the season 1-6. They lost their best player in Tyreek Hill to an injury, and the quarterback was horrendously bad. And yet, at one stretch, they won 5 of 6 games. They beat the Bills, who are in the playoffs, who they never beat. And he changed the game plan. He went to a run-heavy game plan to minimize the play of the quarterback, and the team responded. They won games, and this is not the look of a team that had given up on the coach. A team that has given up on the coach, that's like the Jets, who lose a ton of games at the end of the season. There was plenty of evidence that the problem with the Dolphins was that the roster stunk, including the fact that the GM was fired midway through the season. I don't even know if it was midway through the season, but during the season, the GM got fired. So it was not the fault of Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel was the one thing that was holding it together. And people will they wouldn't fire Mike McDaniel unless they knew they were getting Harbaugh. You sure about that? Like that meme. You sure about that? I don't think you really realize how things work in Miami. There is no master plan. And at the end of the day, Mike McDaniel is going to be just fine. Now, maybe he goes and serves as an offensive coordinator for a year. There's already been talk that the Lions have reached out to him. I think that would be a perfect fit. melding him with Dan Campbell, I think that would be a killer crew, and I'll root for Mike McDaniel wherever he goes. I think the one head coaching opening for McDaniel that would be intriguing would be the Falcons, because they have a lot of offensive talent in place, but they have a bad quarterback situation with Michael Penix, who's been hurt and has not been as productive as a pro. That kind of sounds like what he just came from. Now, maybe he doesn't want to go that route again because he realizes how short these coaching stints can be. But if there was a guy in the league right now who might be able to build Michael Penix into what was envisioned by the Falcons a couple of years ago when they drafted him in the first round, I would think that Mike McDaniel would be that guy. So Mike McDaniel will come out of this smelling like a rose. As for the Dolphins and Stephen Ross, the only game plan there is more failure. And that's the only constant under Stephen Ross as the Miami Dolphins head coach. So Giant fans, rest easy. You're not about to lose John Harbaugh to the Miami Dolphins. And Dolphin fans, prepare for more pain. But by this point, you should kind of be used to that. Okay, now we're joined by our pal David Shepard, longtime radio host, nationally syndicated. You can hear him on SiriusXM NBA Radio, among other places, YouTube, everywhere. He is the Good Shepherd. David, thanks for giving us a couple of minutes, man.
Hey, my pleasure, Gordon. Fan of yours for a while now, so it's my pleasure to be on with you, man.
All right, here's the biggest question you're going to be asked all week.
Okay.
Who's winning the Super Bowl this year? Who you got?
Well, the Chiefs are going to continue this dynasty, right? No. It's more wide open than it's ever been before with the, Wicked Witch of the West being out of it. To me, the whole second-year quarterback thing with Drake May, Bo Nix, wonderful story. It's a little too premature to anoint those guys the Super Bowl champions. So you just got to go with the team that you feel like has been knocking on the door forever, but the Patrick Mahomes character has been standing in the way, and that, of course, is the Buffalo Bills. And then, you look at the NFC. I mean, Sam Darnold, you don't know what guy you're going to get when the lights are brightest and the moments are biggest. And so with that being said, I got to go with that 37-year-old that is a soon-to-be MVP winner in Matthew Stafford.
Like, are you looking at the playoffs this year? Do you have a team that you're pulling for? Not who you think is going to win, but who you'd like to win.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I love to see Marv Levy watch his team at 100 years old get that elusive Super Bowl that they have been chasing for half a century. A Super Bowl, which Ravens fans are finding out the hard way at this point, is just a centimeter away, essentially, from winning a Super Bowl. So they have to be the sentimental favorites, and they're certainly mine. Josh Allen's the ultimate good guy. That franchise, that fan base specifically, has been through enough. So it'd be tough to root for anybody but Buffalo at this point. At least the Rams have had their time in the sun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, for Buffalo this year, right? You could not draw it up any better. The Chiefs are not there. The Ravens are not there.
Right.
Even though they didn't win the division title this year, it is a wide open field. And it feels like what we're seeing with Baltimore, which we'll get into in a second. If this is not the year, it feels like they're going to have to make a change somehow, right?
Yeah, look, that's a tough, debate one way or the other, because you're talking about 18 years of immense success. He's one of the 20 winningest head coaches in NFL history. He's been to a Super Bowl. He won that Super Bowl. He's been to numerous other AFC title games. But something's got to give, to your point, Gordon. I mean, you have a situation where that game against Cincinnati at home, you should have won. You should have won both Steelers games. You never should have coughed it up to the Bills the way you did in week one. To not get into the playoffs where 7 teams make it, and you're losing twice to a 42-year-old quarterback. Now, granted, it's a 4-time MVP, but it's still a 42-year-old quarterback. And as far as I'm concerned, the only quarterback over the age of 40 that has defied age has been Tom Brady. It hasn't been Aaron Rodgers. He's just a quarterback, at least a starter, because of the lack of NFL quality starting QBs. Hence, Phillip Rivers at 44 years old being able to come back and insert himself into the starting lineup of the Indianapolis Colts. So, yeah, something had to shift. I view this as like a Mike Vrabel, Andy Reid situation. Even though I think the Titans were premature in letting Vrabel go, it was just time for Andy Reid and the Eagles to part ways.
Yeah.
And as you know, Gordon, both sides got better because of it. The Eagles won 2 Super Bowls with 2 different head coaches, and the Chiefs became the greatest dynasty, arguably, in NFL history.
Yeah, and it really is a sign of the organization. I always say you have to be able to self-scout better than outside scout. Like it doesn't really matter whatever sport you're talking about. If you can scout outside, that's nice. but you got to know what you have. And you can take a look at different organizations over time who made that pivot, and maybe not right away, but it did eventually lead to a better day ahead. With the Ravens, I think a lot of the attention right now is on losing Harbaugh, and I haven't heard any names, at least so far, of who
Right.
that guy is going to be able to take them to the next level.
So that's a great point that you make. Because if you're going to get rid of the most successful coach in franchise history, and Penn State found this out the hard way. That's why they took a year and a half to replace James Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
You better make sure you bring in a candidate that is a better, more viable option. The Eagles with Doug Peterson, it worked out well.
Mm-hmm.
The Packers, when they said, hey, Super Bowl champ, Mike McCarthy, should have been to another. Special teams did you in. We're going to say goodbye to you, but they go with Matt LaFleur. Now, Matt LaFleur hasn't exactly brought them back to the promised land,
Yep.
but he does seem to be as good of a fit for Green Bay as Mike McCarthy ever was. So that's the key. And it's interesting you bring this up because, I know you've talked about this, and I know you've certainly been on this wavelength. Kevin Stefanski, I mean, we're going to find out how hot of a commodity he is in the next 24, 48 hours, when in all likelihood, he's going to be hired by somebody.
Oh,
And it's going to be
absolutely.
a franchise with more stability than the Cleveland Browns. And same could be said for John Harbaugh. It amazes me that we were talking about if the Steelers lost that game to Baltimore, all it is a 44-yard field goal by Tyler Loop, who you and I could probably make on our best day if we're
Wow,
getting
I don't
paid
know
millions
about
of
me,
dollars
but
to see a
maybe
kick a
you
field
could.
goal.
I could. No.
Well, if we're getting paid millions and millions of dollars and that's our only job, we're not going to choke the way he did. Let's be honest. I wish the kid nothing but the best in his engagement and marriage, and no threat should ever be, spewed his way. But we're talking a field goal. That's the difference here. Mike Tomlin would have been the guy to get the boot more than likely. If not, he
Yeah.
would have been a lame duck coach in 2026. So, these guys are going to get swallowed up pretty quickly. And so Baltimore and Cleveland, they better make sure they get the next hire right, because you're dismissing two guys that have brought you to heights that you hadn't seen in quite some time.
Yeah. And I always go back to the Chargers situation when they had Marty Schottenheimer. Every year they were winning 12, 13,
Yeah.
14 games a year, but they would just never have, every year in the playoffs, something would happen where it would just not click. And they said, you know what? This guy's good enough to get us to a certain level, but he's not good enough to get us over the hump. And then they brought in Norv Turner, and they didn't even get back to that same level. So
No,
there's
they
a
didn't.
very big downside to this, even though the Ravens right now seem like that they are one of the model organizations in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't know how much of a model organization they are I mean, we're talking whether it's, Mark Andrews, whether it's Derrick Henry,
Mhm.
whether it's Lamar Jackson, there always seems to be an excuse with this team coming up short. There always seems to be a self-inflicted wound, a careless turnover, a misread. They always seem to have the best talent, but they never seem to properly execute. That's not just on John Harbaugh. It seems to me a cultural institution thing. And it had, when Lamar, went through that whole impasse with the contract, it's like, look, it's like, why are you hanging your franchise quarterback out to dry like that, where he's got to come out and publicly say he's never going to be a Raven again? That doesn't happen to Joe Burrow. That doesn't happen to Josh Allen. That doesn't happen to Patrick Mahomes. That doesn't even happen to Jared Goff and Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
Why are you airing out your superstar like that? So this whole notion that the Ravens are all class, Steve Bisciotti is one of one. I don't know if I see that.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I mean, they're going to have a very fascinating offseason, and whoever the next head coach is, you'd have to think that guy is going to be on the same page with Lamar Jackson, right? I mean, this seems like it was a split between maybe it wasn't Harbaugh per se, maybe it was the offensive coordinator, but you take a look at that article that came out in the Baltimore Sun a couple of weeks
Yep.
ago, kind of
Yep.
really airing out the quarterback, a two-time MVP, and talking about that had to come from somewhere, and it certainly did not come from Lamar Jackson.
Right. Yeah, it's a great point. You don't read those things about Patrick. You don't read those things about Josh or Joe, or you talk about some of the younger guys like a CJ Stroud, or Jordan Love, guys that are kind of up and coming. You certainly don't hear that about Drake May or Bo Nix. That was troubling. That had shades of Kyler Murray written all over it. The difference is at least Lamar's won 3 playoff games. But you're right. There was a clear hit job there, and it worked because clearly Harbaugh's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the Black Monday firing of coaches, what is there any of these jobs that opened up that you look at and you say, boy, somebody's going to get a really good situation there? Because it seems like each of the openings, well, there's obviously a reason why they're open, but it does not seem
Right.
like there's any turnkey operations in terms of
Yeah.
any of the openings this year.
Is Derrick Henry, and you'll appreciate this reference. Is this John Riggins 2.0?
Yeah.
If it is, got to go with Baltimore and you got to go with New York.
Hmm.
Because what do those two things have in common? A quarterback that has a lot of talent that's upper echelon. Now, Jackson Dart has work to do,
Yeah.
but you saw what this kid was able to do in year one. By far, no disrespect to Cam Ward or Shador Sanders or Tyler Shugg, he was the most promising rookie on the field in 2025 at the quarterback position. Because of that, you got to love those two openings. Now, I don't know why Brian Dable, an offensive guru, couldn't make that work. If he can't make it work, what makes you think the next offensive guy you're going to bring in? And by the way, here's a point that I think needs to be made. Mike Vrabel, is he your coach of the year, Gordon?
I actually think it would be Liam Cohn, but who actually is going to win it, I think will be Vrabel. But who I
Okay,
would vote for is
right.
personally, I would look at what Liam Cohn was able to do in Jacksonville.
So this notion, and that's a great point. Liam Cohen, Duval coming out of
Mhm.
nowhere, absolutely has done wonders
And
in
to get the
Jacksonville.
quarterback to play his cleanest football
Yeah,
of his career when he's
without
what,
question.
6, 7 years in is saying something.
Without question, looking like that guy in the second half versus the Chargers in his second year for damn sure. When you talk about, an offensive mindset and an offensive guru, how did that work out with a defensive hire in Mike Vrabel in New England,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
With an up and coming, promising young quarterback. So how did it work out in Seattle with Mike McDonald? Now, granted, that's a little different because you have a veteran quarterback, more established than Sam Darnold. He's been in the league for almost a decade now. But you can hire the best guy, not just the best offensive-minded guy, especially with a young quarterback. Look at the turnaround in New England. It doesn't have to be a Sean Payton hire.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the Patriots have something that is almost as valuable as anything else in that they have an excellent offensive coordinator who will almost certainly only be an offensive coordinator
Right.
for the rest of his career.
Oh,
So,
that's for sure.
and Josh McDaniels. So, I mean, I think that that's a really underlooked point of the success that they've had there because usually if you hire the defensive guy, then
Right.
if you hire an offensive coordinator and he's any good,
Right.
the next year he's probably going to be gone. And I think you take a look at that maybe with what happened with Detroit this year. You look at some other situations as well. Certainly with the Buccaneers and Tampa Bay losing
Yeah.
Liam Cohen. So I do think that the Patriot situation. I don't know if it's a blueprint, but they got it right. Happy for the Patriots. Finally, something works out for them, right?
Yes, yes. And you asked, the surprises of kind of Black Monday. Cliff Kingsbury, I don't understand how you gauge the guy when Jaden Daniels isn't healthy in year two. In year one, they make it to an NFC title game. They hadn't done that in more than 30 years. They did it with a rookie quarterback. I don't know how you dismiss Cliff Kingsbury a year later when essentially he's got nothing to work with and nothing in comparison to healthy Jaden Daniels. So I didn't like that. I also didn't, and this is kind of, man, maybe it's symmetry to our industry, so to speak. But I don't love what happened to Pete Carroll. I don't think you hire a guy for 40 years. He's got a Hall of Fame resume. He didn't have much to work with. It's obviously a rebuild. He wins 4 games. They didn't quit on him. They did not quit on him. They did not quit on him. That final game, they were balling. Yes, Patrick Mahomes isn't on the field, but he deserves a little bit of credit for that. You don't dismiss someone after 1 year, especially someone that has been to 2 Super Bowls, been to 2 national championships, won those two. I count them. I'm sorry, NCAA. You don't know what you're
They
doing
still
anyway.
happen. I still watch them on TV. They're real.
Right, right. Listen, when I think of Rick Pitino, I don't care what they want to make about the 2013 NCAA title. He's a two-time national champion as a head coach. Um, I don't love how he was unceremoniously dismissed after just 1 year. If you want to make it a mutual parting of ways because you really feel like Pete Carroll can't see greener pastures or can't see the clear vision that the Raiders are set up for with Mark Davis, Tom Brady, etc., that's one thing. But to fire him, that didn't sit well with me. Like I think what the Ravens had to have done was they had to have said, "Listen, we got to mutually part ways." Just out of respect for an 18-year
Mhm.
successful head coach and John Harbaugh. Same could be said with Mike Tomlin when eventually that goes south. It should be a mutually parting of ways. There needs to be more respect for head coaches that have had immense success in the NFL, and that's certainly no exception when it comes to Pete Carroll.
Yeah, and you take a look at the situation with the Raiders. We talk about, what's the most enviable position to be in. I think the Raiders is the worst position to be in because they are in a constant state of
Yes.
I mean, they're going to be paying down six coaches at the same time, basically, with whoever they hire next. They made the play for stability this past year and actually got worse somehow.
Right.
Yeah, it's a really bad situation. And the only thing, and I don't know if this is going to happen. You've seen some other situations where, the Dolphins are bringing in Troy Aikman, the Falcons are bringing in Matt Ryan.
Yep.
Tom Brady has got to be the guy there. And I don't know how much hands-on he wants to be, but if he can convince, I said this on a previous podcast episode, if he's able to convince a head coach with options to
Right.
take the Raiders job, that might be the most impressive thing he's ever accomplished in his NFL career, because that seems like a situation that, I mean, I almost feel like the Raiders should entertain trading the first pick because they are so terrible offensive line. They got to bring in a whole new coaching staff. They have a running back and a tight end and a pass rusher who's unhappy, who's going to turn 29 next year. They just seem like they are miles away from being even respectable.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And look, I mean, Brady can't be great at everything,
Yeah.
you know? And he's got, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's still got ownership
Yeah.
in a soccer league.
Hmm.
He's obviously a really good broadcaster in year number two. He's got so many different pizzas in different ovens. He's so busy, he's so consumed. This is an all or nothing job.
Yeah.
You look at John Lynch, successful NFL players turn successful NFL executives. John Elway certainly comes to mind. You got to be all in. And I just don't know if you're prepping because it ain't easy to do a national televised game as a broadcaster. There's prep that goes into it. There's a
Absolutely.
lot of work that goes into it. Every time you're doing that, that's taking away
There's only
from
so
what
many
you're
hours in
doing
a
as an
day. Yep.
executive. Look, yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Look. I mean, I'm not going to take shots at Doug Gottlieb. I know people do that enough. You can't be a full-time head coach and be a full-time broadcaster. Like, what did you think was going to happen there? I can't believe he almost did it for more than a year. And
Yeah.
then he had to say, when, wisdom had to prevail, I can't do both.
Yeah.
And I think Tom Brady is going to find out the hard way. He can't do both. You got
Yeah.
to you got to pick a lane.
Well, I will say this as well because the one reputation you always heard about Brady was he is the ultimate killer, right?
Of
He's
course.
so competitive. He'll bar bet whatever it is, football game, whatever it is. So if he's gonna dip his toe in at all with the Raiders and actually have his hand in, and it seems like the press release has his name on it.
Right.
You have to decide because again, there's only so many hours in a day, and
Right.
he went out last year trying to get Ben Johnson, was not able to seal the deal there. At some point, maybe Brady becomes one of these guys who's a great player, has got a lot of great abilities, but did not turn out to be a great executive. And maybe it's a little unfair because we don't know how much he's actually involved in the entire process. But
Right.
if he wants, I'll tell you right now, if the Raiders turn around next year,
Yeah.
Tom Brady's going to get credit for it, whether his part in it
Yeah.
changes at all.
But you know how these A types are, and you know how these maniacal, obsessive individuals are. If they attach or align their name with a project, an organization, a team, a company, they're going to be associated with that. They're not doing it half-ass.
Mhm.
So if you're Tom Brady, get in or get out.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
this is part of your football legacy. It is.
Yeah.
We're all big. Listen, I'm a big Michael Jordan guy. He's always going to go down as the greatest player of all time in my eyes, but
Hmm.
he's also going to go down as one of the all-time
Worst
buffoons
executive. Yeah.
as executives.
Yeah.
What he did when in Charlotte, it felt like he was running a daycare. That's how irrelevant they became in terms of NBA circles. That's going to be part of his basketball resume and legacy. I don't think Brady wants that on his radar at all.
Yeah. No, no question. All right, let's shift a little bit to the NBA. I'm a casual NBA fan. I'm a Knick fan, but I'm a
Sure.
casual NBA fan. So to me, opening night is Christmas Day. That's when I
Yep.
start to lock in a little bit. What do you see in terms of the landscape of the NBA, and is it the Thunder versus everybody else the rest of this season?
It's a good question. It kind of reminds me a lot of 2016 when it seemed like it was the Warriors and then everybody else. And then what people forget is not only did they lose in the NBA Finals in Game 7 and that amazing Kyrie Irving three-point winner, but they barely made it to the finals. The Oklahoma City Thunder were up 3-1 in
3-1.
the Western
Yeah.
Conference Finals. So I think, and this is just from a bird's eye view, um, I don't know the inner workings of OKC. They seem to be prioritizing the regular season more than they should.
Hmm.
And I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive because as an NBA champion, you want to come back hungry, you want to come back motivated. There has to be a target, there has to be a goal, there has to be a bar that you're trying to exceed. But it reminds me a little bit of what the Warriors are trying to do when in 2015, 2016, they were chasing 72 wins by the Chicago Bulls, got it by one game in the final game of the season when they beat the Memphis Grizzlies. But then it seemed like when they got to the playoffs, their tank was not necessarily on empty, but it was certainly, looking like he was hedging there because it took so much out of them. That's what I see ultimately transpiring with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're going for the record, but I don't know how much they're going to have left against a very deep Western Conference. And we've seen they don't match up well at all with San Antonio. So if they see San Antonio in a 7-game series, I like the team playing at the Alamo right now. I like the 7'6" Victor Wembanyama and company taking out OKC the way they did, not once, not twice, 3 times already in the regular season so far. So no, I do not see the NBA as wide open. Excuse me, I don't see the NBA as being a closed,
Hmm.
closed case of a team winning an NBA championship in the Oklahoma City Thunder. I see it a lot more likely that they don't win as opposed to them actually repeating as NBA champions.
Yeah, and the thing with the NBA is like we have seen teams, maybe not so recently, just dominate postseason. Like there's not going to be an NBA champion. I feel like the rest of my lifetime that is just going to run through the NBA playoffs. You know what I mean? Like you are going to get fights somewhere. Maybe that first round if you're
Yeah,
a dominant regular season team. But you brought up the Warriors. I mean, you take a look at the Thunder last year, played 7 games in the NBA Finals against the Pacers team. You're just
right.
not gonna run through the NBA finals or
And
the NBA playoffs like a dominant regular season ever.
and if Tyrese doesn't suffer that Achilles tendon
Right? Who
injury,
knows?
who knows what happens there? And I thought the Nuggets gave everything and then some to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the second round. That series went 7.
Hmm.
You know, if they close out, I think it was game 4 when they had them on the ropes. If they close them out in game 4, when they could have taken a decisive 3-1 series lead in that particular series, yeah, the Thunder in 2 different series, they escaped barely.
Hmm.
So it's not wide open. Excuse me, I keep saying that. It's not a case closed shut scenario when it comes to the Oklahoma. I guess maybe that's me thinking this would be Freud saying, "Hey, psychologically, you want it to be wide open. You don't. So it makes it interesting. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how this plays out. I don't think Shea Gilgeous-Alexander gets enough credit for what he's doing right now, Gordon Damer.
Hmm.
You talk about an individual that last year, became the first guy, since Michael Jordan to win a scoring champion,
Yeah.
to be an NBA Finals MVP, to be a regular season MVP, and we don't talk about him. We don't talk about him. The only conversation and narrative surrounding SGA is, hey, he's boring, or he gets way too many looks at the free
False.
throw line, and the
Right.
refs always bail him out. So
Mhm.
there needs to be a deeper appreciation for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We always talk about athletes being ambassadors, being role models. That's the ultimate guy right there.
Yeah. Well, I do think that there's a thing about the NBA that if you look like the rest of us, kind of like you have to be like this freak of nature, like
LeBron,
Jokic or
Michael,
Wemby. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like you
yeah,
have
yeah,
to be like
Giannis,
this,
yeah,
right? This
for sure.
absolute freak to kind of get the attention. Unfortunately, a lot of times. But look, the Thunder, they're amazing. I'm more concerned, as I said. I'm a Knicks fan. I'm not really an NBA fan. I just want to see my Knicks do well. Is this the year that the Knicks get to the NBA Finals? And how troubled would you be by this little recent stretch that they've been on where
Yeah.
the effort's a little lagging after that NBA Cup title, you know?
So I think Jalen Brunson is a gifted offensive tactician. I think his footwork is one of one. What he's able to do under 6'3", we
Hmm.
haven't seen a guard this dominant, in my opinion, since Isaiah Thomas. Um, because Iverson was a prolific scorer, but he wasn't efficient. Jalen
Right.
Brunson's efficient, but he doesn't play both sides of the ball at an elite level. Karl Anthony Towns, I'm worried from game to game whether he's going to have more fouls than made baskets. So I don't trust nor love their chances of making the NBA Finals. I also think, speaking of getting the right coaching hire, it was a downgrade. I don't care what the record says. It was a downgrade to go from Tom Thibodeau to Mike Brown. Mike Brown, every single time he gets to the postseason, becomes Walt Disney. He freezes every single time, whether it was Cleveland, whether it was the Lakers, whether it was Sacramento. So no, I can honestly tell you now. Uh, when I ever get an opportunity to host at WFAN, which I always appreciate when you're on because you do a great job, and I see it in the comments, I see it in the feedback. I will have a different tune because I want to make sure I get Nick, WFAN fans hyped up. But
Yeah.
I can tell you honestly, between you and me, obviously those who are listening to your YouTube channel and your podcast right now, I would say that there is no
Wow.
chance whatsoever that I can trust Mike Brown and the two best players for the New York Knicks. I know the Pistons are young, but I think they have the confidence, knowing what they just did to New York, that they can absolutely play with them in a 7-game series. And then let's see what happens with Jason Tatum if he's able to come back at least 70, 80% in March or April with the Celtics.
Is there a team in the East that you say that's the roadblock? Is it the Pistons? Or
The
are
the
you just taking
roadblock
the field?
the roadblock is themselves
Mhm.
because Jalen doesn't do it on both sides of the floor. Karl Anthony Towns is still a foul out waiting to happen, and then they have a liability at the head coaching position. I mean, Mike Brown, the guy wins Coach of the Year and then flails every single time when his teams make the playoffs. It's like clockwork with him. It's like clockwork.
Well,
So yeah,
I mean, this is I mean, there's no, like, you can't fire Tibbs
right.
after the season last year, not really make any significant changes to the roster. I mean, I know Jordan Clarkson and Kolik's getting more run and all that type of stuff. So that's all well and good.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can't make the changes that the Knicks made after getting to the Eastern Conference Finals the year before and then fail to take the next step the following year and
sure.
consider the year a
I
success.
agree.
They can run through the Eastern Conference. If they don't get to an NBA Finals this year, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Even for Knick fans who are wildly optimistic,
I agree.
this season will be a failure.
Agree. And listen, if Aaron Nesmith doesn't go all, Reggie Miller in game one,
Mhm.
Knicks are making the NBA Finals with Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah.
I heard the James Dolan interview with Craig Carton and Chris McMonagle. I don't buy anything he's saying. I think there was clearly um, James Dolan caving in to whatever external pressure he felt. You can't tell me the guy gets you to a place you've never been this century and then letting him go is the solution. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, look, to go back to where we started, self-scouting, right? Like the
Yeah,
Knicks under Leon Rose have been excellent at scouting outside the organization and knowing what I mean, you take a look at the Josh Hart deal. They certainly got the best version of Josh Hart. They've gotten the best version of Jalen Brunson. Brunson wasn't this before they got him.
right.
There's been a lot of moves that he has made, but this is the biggest one so far. Now, it might not be the biggest one of his tenure because if for some reason this season it doesn't work, the name Giannis is out there and all the rumors. But this is a big season for Leon Rose and the self scouting of the New York Knicks organization.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But at the same time, you can't sabotage yourself. And I feel like the Knicks have done that in getting rid of Tom Thibodeau. He built it. He built it. He was the guy that got Jalen Brunson to an elite level. Josh Hart playing his best basketball. He's had success with Karl Anthony Towns, not just in New York, but also in Minnesota. You better get this one right. And I don't think they got this one right at all, to your point. And yes, self-scouting, it matters. So now you better be able to deliver on this self-scouting.
Shep, it's always a pleasure talking to you, man. I wish you nothing but the best, and hopefully, if you got some free time, I'll be hitting you up again pretty soon.
Sounds good, Gordon. Pleasure being on with you, my friend. Thank you for having me.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, finally, for our last story today, we're going to go a little different. We're going to get a little weird here. And who doesn't love a good NFL conspiracy theory every once in a while, right? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that the information in this story I 100% believe, but the information is compelling enough that it makes you think that maybe in 5-10 years, we'll be looking on this story and looking back on it and thinking to ourselves, why didn't people take this more seriously at the time? So the story is, and it's a little out there, I'll tell you that right off the surface, it involves the San Francisco 49ers, and it involves their new stadium, a Levi Stadium, a stadium they moved into back in 2014. And it's something that lines up with where the stadium is located, the fact that they are an injury-prone team year in and year out, and the fact that maybe, possibly, one of the factors that is leading to these injuries are the electromagnetic fields surrounding the stadium. I said it sounds a little out there, but let's put on our tinfoil hats. So let's start with the facts as we know them. As I said, the 49ers are the most injury-prone team statistically. They are number one. They are the most injured team over the last decade. And they're not one of or kind of. They are number one. They are in a category by themselves. It happens every single year. Since moving into Levi Stadium in 2014, they have finished top 5 in adjusted games lost to injury in 10 of 11 seasons. So only one time were they not among. Every single year they're hurt. They're hurt this year. That's been a big story surrounding them. And the type of injuries matter here. We're not just talking about the random things. The Niners have suffered 8 full Achilles or patella tendon ruptures when the league average over the entire rest of the league is like 2 to 3 over the course of the entire year. Add in 40 major hamstring injuries and calf tears and high ankle sprains and all that type of stuff. And they have these injuries every single season. No other franchise in terms of the data even comes close. So when you start to think about the most common causes for this or the most common explanations, people will chalk it up to the turf that they play on or the fact that Kyle Shanahan runs a very aggressive offensive system, or they just have injury-prone players, or it's just bad luck. Except other teams play on the same turf. Their Achilles aren't snapping at the same rate that the 49ers are. Plenty of teams run aggressive offensive systems without turning their rosters into mash units. Again, consistently every single year. And this is where things start to get a little weird, because when people start going looking for answers outside of the normal ones, the theory, and this one does not come from some deep state message board anywhere. A lot of the research and the data was put together and compiled by a couple of popular, prominent Twitter accounts. One of them was Peter Cowan, and the other was Chase Sr. And Chase Sr. actually put out this information that he did research on like almost a full year ago. So these guys are not just throwing things at the wall to see what will stick, but they started lining up the injury data and the timelines and the biology research, and then asking questions that, no one else has really thought to ask before. And this is something that the players themselves have talked about. Earlier this year, 49ers offensive lineman John Feliciano offhandedly had talked about how there was a theory floating around the locker room for years, and players have joked about the electrical substation that sits right next to the 49ers practice facility at Levi Stadium. So if you look at a map of where it's at, Levi Stadium is located, it's a very large electrical substation located right next to it. Now, maybe this happens at other stadiums as well, but the 49ers one is very noticeable. So I know what you're thinking, because I kind of thought the same thing. Okay, so what, that there's a substation right next to it and the 49ers get injured a lot? What's the connection there? Well, people who are far smarter than I started digging into what went into the practice facility. So they took this gauge called a Gauss meter, which measures electromagnetic fields. And so for some context, like a normal home environment or an office environment would read between 0.5 to 3, what's called milligauss, right? At the edge of the Niners practice facility, it registered 8.5 on a Monday when electricity demand was rather low. So that's kind of off the charts. And this is where the theory claims it connects to injuries, because according to the researched papers, like thousands of peer-reviewed studies, thousands of these studies have said that chronic exposure to low-frequency electromagnetic fields could weaken the collagen in your body. And collagen is the building block of tendons and ligaments. Again, I know that it's out there, but the idea that the damage isn't that dramatic or immediate is because it happens slowly. It builds up over time. It's accumulated over months and years until one day, all of a sudden, it shows up like a professional athlete doing things that a professional athlete does, like plants and cuts and move. And then all of a sudden, the tendon just goes like that. So there seems to be some connection. Now, supporters of the theory will point out the injury patterns matter, right? The fact that it's Achilles tendons and or Achilles ruptures and patella tendons and muscle tendon junctions, that's where it fails. They argue that matches up with what has been observed in lab researched studies based on prolonged ELF exposure, as they say. Now, again, it's a conspiracy theory, and to be fair, this part matters. Major health organizations like the WHO say there's insufficient proof that the harm would happen at the levels that we're talking about. And federal guidelines only recognize EMF danger when it causes measurable heating. So they don't look at this as being that. And they wrote those guidelines a while ago now. And the critics will say that correlation does not equal causation. But the 49ers' problems are still, they say, more likely the common things that people blame, the turf and the training methods and the pure randomness of injuries. And they are the experts on these type of things. They're not guys hanging out on the internet. But here's where I get stuck. If this is total nonsense, right? If this doesn't go anywhere, why doesn't anybody want to kind of look into it? Like, why not measure it officially? Why not maybe relocate the practice facility for a period of time to be able to measure it? Because again, the injury problems are consistent. So why not just kill the theory altogether? It would seem to make kind of sense to do whatever you could to kind of gain that edge. Because the image to me of Dre Greenlaw in the Super Bowl, where he was just going out onto the field and all of a sudden his Achilles snaps, just onto the field and just like that. There was no collision. There was no contact, nothing. So I think the question that after doing some reading about this and watching videos and going down the rabbit hole, that I think every sports fan would want to know, is this insane or does this actually have some teeth somewhere? So I'm not saying that the 49ers are being sabotaged by invisible waves or anything like that, but I'm saying that it's possible that these guys might have cracked some secret code at least, and the data screams that something is different when it comes to the 49ers players themselves. Again, the players themselves actually kind of been whispering about this and the possibilities that this is here, and some independent researchers who are not connected to the NFL, they have gone and kind of connected the dots that nobody else will at least acknowledge. But the craziest part of this isn't the conspiracy. Maybe the craziest part of this is that no one in the NFL, at least so far, seems curious enough to kind of find out if this has any real legs whatsoever. So to me, if this is complete nonsense, why are the 49ers always the outlier, right? Like, why don't we see anything remotely like this injury pattern in other franchises? It's, again, since they moved into the stadium. It wasn't an issue before that, but it has been since. And if random injuries are just that, random, why does the randomness keep hanging out with the 49ers year in and year out? Now, again, I don't think that they've had Kyle Shanahan since 2014, but the injuries have been there since 2014. And is there going to be a point where the bad luck moves to somebody else for a while? Because the 49ers, again, consistently, year in and year out since the move, are the most injured team in the NFL. And randomness it's supposed to spread around. It's supposed to land on somebody else sometimes, and it has not done that. Also, what's interesting to me is that the NFL, they are the most data-obsessed league on earth. They study everything. They're a league that tracks the sleep, and teams measure hydration and heart rate and GPS on the field and move, all this different thing. But they have not gotten to the level of environmental exposure. And again, maybe that's just too far out there right now, but the NFL, they are not cheap. They spend billions of dollars protecting quarterbacks and protecting players in all these different ways, and they won't spend, I don't know what it would take, but a fraction of that to find out if this has any impact whatsoever. So again, like I said, perhaps there's nothing to this, and this is just a crazy conspiracy theory that a couple of guys who have way too much time on their hands have been able to line up. But conspiracy theories are only that, conspiracy theories right up until the point that they're not anymore. And in the history of sports, in the history of life, there's been plenty of things that we were told were completely impossible. That's crazy talk, right up until the point they were undeniable. But to be denied, you have to kind of research. And the only difference here, to me, between a conspiracy theory and the truth sometimes is whether anybody is going to even bother to look. And again, this is one of those things that maybe in 5 years, we'll look back on and say, why did nobody take this more seriously at the time? Because it could have, if the 49ers could ever figure out a way to avoid the injuries that have plagued them for the last decade or more, boy, they would really be onto something. And I would be thinking, as an organization worth billions of dollars, I would be turning over every rock that I could possibly do to find out a way to get past this when it's been such a consistent theme surrounding the organization. All right, that's going to do it for today. Again, if you've listened this far, if you watched this far, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. It doesn't really, it doesn't cost you anything at all, and it really does help out the podcast grow. And we'll be back next week with a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports.